Imagine standing on the deck of the world's most powerful warship, ruling the seas, armed with hundreds of heavy cannons, ready to obliterate any threat. Yet, ancient admirals feared one hidden danger more than any fleet. Out of the heavy morning mist, a single wooden ship slowly emerges. It fires absolutely no guns and carries no living crew on board. Suddenly, it transforms into a terrifying, floating mountain of fire. Sailing one of these fire ships was a guaranteed suicide mission for a desperate crew. Sailing one of these fire ships was a guaranteed suicide mission for a desperate crew. Their only job was to aim the blazing vessel directly into the enemy fleet before locking the wheel in place and escaping into the dark sea at the final second. If the crew failed, they would blow up into pieces along with their ship. But if they succeeded, they could destroy an entire naval empire in just one single night. These terrifying weapons completely altered the balance of power across the historic oceans, making the fire ship one of the most feared tactics in the history of naval warfare. In 1588, the unstoppable Spanish Armada sailed to conquer England. The English fleet was heavily outnumbered, facing certain and total annihilation. But during the pitch-black night, the English launched 8 blazing fire ships into their enemy. Panic instantly spread through the Spanish fleet, causing them to scatter in pure terror. Without firing a single cannon, the English turned the entire battle completely in their favor. The legendary Spanish Armada was broken, destroying their fierce reputation of absolute global dominance. For centuries, the mere threat of a fire ship kept greatest empires at bay, proving that sometimes the ultimate weapon of war is pure, unadulterated psychological terror. Creating a deadly fire ship required complex engineering and dark scientific precision. Special secret chambers were carved inside to hold tons of highly explosive gunpowder. The wooden walls were completely coated with thick pitch and flammable liquid sulfur, turning the entire vessel into a ticking time bomb waiting to erupt. To guarantee a perfect hit, captains usually disguised these floating bombs as ordinary ships. They even placed fake wooden crew members on the upper deck to deceive enemy scouts. Enemy fleets would allow them to approach, completely unaware of the impending catastrophe. By the time they realized the deadly truth, escape was absolutely impossible for the massive armada. When the fire ships approached, the psychological terror alone would break the enemy's spirit. Sailors would jump blindly into the freezing sea rather than face the approaching inferno. The blazing vessels acted like heat-seeking missiles, locking onto the massive stationary wooden fleets. Upon the final impact, the highly combustible materials would trigger an unstoppable chain reaction. A single spark reached the lower hull, unleashing a blinding explosion that ripped the night apart. The intense heat was so powerful, it instantly melted the heavy iron cannons of neighboring ships. Burning debris rained from the sky, turning the entire harbor into a chaotic floating cemetery. There was absolutely no defense against it. A single cheap weapon ruined multi-million-dollar fleets. As the devastating losses grew, naval commanders desperately searched for an effective defensive countermeasure. They built massive floating wooden booms, chained tightly together, to block the harbor entrances. Specialized lookout boats were deployed, equipped with long grappling hooks to catch the flaming vessels. Brave defenders would hook the burning ships and manually tow them away from the main fleet. This triggered a deadly game of wits as attackers added hidden cannons inside the burning structures. The extreme heat would automatically fire the guns, blasting any defensive boats that dared to approach. These booby-trapped fire ships became deadlier, turning defensive rescue missions into instant massacres. Naval warfare had officially transformed into a terrifying arena of absolute and merciless deception. With the arrival of the 19th century, industrial technology began to change naval warfare forever. Massive steam-powered ironclad warships replaced the vulnerable wooden fleets of the old world. Iron hulls could easily repel the flames, making the terrifying fire ships completely obsolete. The era of wooden kamikazes had ended, giving way to the cold age of steel and steam. Though the ships themselves vanished, their radical tactical concept lived on in secret journals. Modern military tacticians still study these battles to understand the core principles of asymmetric warfare. Because the core lesson of the fire ship is that size and wealth do not guarantee victory. A desperate defender with a clever plan can always bring down the world's greatest superpower. The roaring fires of these suicide ships have long since burned out into cold ocean ashes, but their terrifying historical legacy remains deeply engraved in the dark annals of naval warfare, reminding us that true power does not always belong to the largest fleet, but to those brave enough to weaponize absolute desperation against impossible odds. The fire ship will always stand as the ultimate symbol of lethal human ingenuity. Next time you look at the ocean, remember the terrifying ghosts of the blazing fire ships.